the importance of Ramadan. Every year, millions of Muslims around the world observe Ramadan. But beyond the fasting and rituals, what does the month truly mean? For some, it's a time of spiritual renewal. For others, it's a test of discipline and self-control. And for many, it's an opportunity to reflect, reset, and reconnect with faith, family, and personal values. But with the world moving at such a fast pace, do we sometimes lose sight of the deeper essence of Ramadan? Is it just about abstaining from food and drink, or is there a deeper lesson that we should carry beyond the 30 days? Ramadan. I'm really looking forward to having this very important conversation with our guest today. Joining me in the studio is the founder of the HSM tribe, which is a community for women, and we have with us Khadija Bello. Welcome to Rubbing Minds.
Thank you for having me, Isabella, and Eid Mubarak.
Eid Mubarak and Eid al-Fitr, right?
Yes, Eid al-Fitr, so yeah. Happy Eid al-Fitr.
So we're just talking about Ramadan, and for a lot of people, they just see it as, oh, it's that holy month, Muslims fast. But there's more to Ramadan than just fasting, abstaining from food. Like we said in the intro, it's about the small gestures. It's about community, family, faith, values, self-discipline, self-control. So what's the deeper significance for you with Ramadan?
Yes, I mean, we've just come out of the holy month of Ramadan, but I think that this is a very resonant conversation. And to understand the significance of the month, you really need to go back to why does it matter? Why is it something that we mark as Muslims? Ramadan is the month in which the Holy Quran was revealed by Allah to the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Ramadan is the month in which we abstain from food and drink from sun up to sunset. But you know, beyond food and drink, Ramadan is really an opportunity for us to reflect. It's an opportunity for gratitude and empathy, for you to really feel and sort of put yourself in the shoes of people who are not privileged or have as much as we do. So, you know, sort of abstaining teaches you what it is that some other people go through as a course of their normal lives. So I'd say yes, Ramadan is very important for us. It's a month where we strive to be on our best behavior, but ultimately carry it beyond that month into the rest of the year.
And personally, what are the lessons you've taken from this holy month of Ramadan and your communities about women? What are some of those lessons that you've shared with these Muslimas, with these Muslim women?
Yes. So personally for me over the years, Ramadan has been a bit of a roller coaster. But it's ultimately about striving. It's really about striving to grow and to improve. For me, it teaches me the value of time. It's 30 days, but it's 30 days where you sort of come correct and want to get the most out of this limited time period that you have. So for me, in terms of personal lessons and takeaways, especially from this last Ramadan, it's really just valuing that time that you have. It's easy to get carried away sometimes. I mean, you start off strong, but ultimately life gets in the way. You get into that mid-lull by half of the month. And then when you enter the last 10 days, everyone can sort of relate with that urge, that urgency to now want to fall back on the right track. So I say yes, for me, ultimately, it's just about time and understanding just how valuable it is, especially in the world that we find ourselves today.
And, you know, a lot of people think it's just that abstaining from food and water, but there's more. Something you said in your earlier answer is you come correct. Are there other things that you abstain from during that period beyond the food and the water?
Yeah, so you don't eat or drink, that's the basic, but it's actually a combination. You're fasting with all of your senses. So it's not just what goes into your mouth, but it's what you say, what you do, what you see, what you hear. So you're not backbiting. You're not, you know, putting yourselves in situations that you shouldn't be. It's what you touch. You're abstaining from sexual relations as well, apart from food and drink from sun up to sundown. Ultimately, you are trying to leave behind bad habits and embrace better ones. It's also an opportunity to really improve on charity, and your faith, on all of the other pillars of Islam, in a way that really helps you to get the most out of that month.
And what are some challenges, especially women?
Yes.
What are some challenges they face during this holy month? You said earlier on that when you get to that halfway mark, the lull sets in and you just have to push through. So what are the challenges and how have you been able to overcome them?
I mean, speaking not just from a personal perspective, but also things that I've observed in the community around me, I think that social norms have a very key role to play in terms of challenges. Women are traditionally the caretakers, the homemakers. They're the ones who are preparing the meals that you eat pre-dawn, and you know, at sunset again when you're breaking your fast. It's, if not intentional, it's possible to really spend most of Ramadan in the kitchen, as opposed to, you know, also partaking in acts of ibadah, acts of worship that the month is all about. And to be fair, there are blessings in doing all of that service, in cooking for the family, in trying to ensure that people, you know, feeding needy Muslims, etc. But ultimately, people, women especially, should also be able to partake in the blessings and the goodness of that month. So I think that's why we're always advocating for better family systems, better dynamics, where there are stronger support systems to enable women take a backseat sometimes and also, you know, make the most of that month. One other thing to also bear in mind is guilt. I think that it's more of like a personal state of mind, obviously, but that's one challenge that people face. You start off really strong, you have all your goals set for Ramadan and what you want to achieve, but ultimately, consistency, it takes a lot to be consistent and to maintain that momentum in terms of how you've started. So some people may burn out, or some people may find themselves at a point where they are no longer able to sustain and could fall into that trap of, well, okay, I'm in the slump now, and that slump sort of dictates the rest of their Ramadan. But it's being able to rise above that guilt. And I mean, you're in the month of mercy, where literally we believe that shaitan and evil forces are completely at bay in the month, and you know, God's mercy is, it abounds. So that's one way to really find yourself and sort of pull yourself when you get into that slump or that guilt. It's ultimately just, it's never over until it's
Not to
over.
give up.
Yeah, exactly.
Just
Don't
keep
give up
going.
and just keep going.
You mentioned acts of ibadah. Can you tell us more about these acts that are practiced during the month of Ramadan, and I'm sure even beyond the month of Ramadan?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so you have the basic pillars of Islam, you know, your faith, salah, that's observing your obligatory prayers, both obligatory and voluntary. You find people wanting to observe more voluntary prayers during the month, from the additional prayers that you make around the individual prayer times to the prayer that we have in the evening, the Taraweeh prayers at the masjids and mosques. You give acts of charity. There's a very huge blessing in feeding other fasting Muslims, whether or not they can afford it. Just saying, being nice, you know, to other people, as I said, avoiding things like backbiting, gossip, etc. So all of this sort of like builds together, including, you know, your acts of worship, your charity, your fasting. When you all put that together, it's kind of like the, I don't know, ultimate roadmap for the ideal Ramadan. Yeah.
You mentioned charity like 2 or 3 times.
Yes,
so
it's really important.
Why is charity, that's zakat and sadaqah, such a core part of Ramadan?
It is. So they're different. They're both charity, but they're different. Zakat is obligatory for every Muslim who can afford it. And sadaqah is ongoing charity, things you do every day, whether it's buying food for someone or paying a transport fare for a passenger or even smiling. Smiling is a very huge act of charity, whereas zakat is it's like a tax. on your wealth, but it is only for Muslims who can afford it above a particular threshold. Especially, and then within that you have Zakat al-Fitri, which we have just given after Ramadan and before we said the Eid prayers this morning. It's usually given as grain, food, to allow needy Muslims be able to celebrate and participate in the celebrations around Eid. So ultimately, charity is really important because it's your way of showing gratitude, again, to Allah for the wealth that He has blessed you with, and ultimately for that wealth to be replenished. So it's a way of cleansing wealth. It's a way of showing compassion to others who do not have. And it's a way of really seeking God's blessings.
So no matter how much you have, there's something you can do.
There's something you can do. If you do not have anything, smile. It does a lot for someone who's having a bad day or who's thinking, and they just see you beaming at them. It uplifts them, even if it's for a minute. That's something you can do, even if you don't have anything.
And how can this impact be felt beyond the holy month, these acts of charity?
Yeah, it's so it's two ways, and it's beyond acts of charity. All of the good deeds, all of the things, the values that are sort of felt in the month of Ramadan, they could be carried forward either personally in terms of sustained impact. It's either from a personal perspective or from a communal perspective. As individuals, if you're able to take a good habit, even if it's one, and maintain it after Ramadan, that consistency that we spoke about earlier, it builds you, you're growing, there's progress, there's a stronger spiritual connection between you and your Lord. So from a personal perspective, you could do that. From a communal perspective, when we talk about the generosity and you know, charity, as you said, that Muslim women, both Muslim women and men, Muslims generally are prone to do more of in Ramadan. We've had situations where funding for whole mosques or community centers or other social impact programs have been raised all in the month of Ramadan. So that act of giving and generosity could ultimately help to establish programs whose social impacts are felt long, way beyond the month and for generations to come. That's why it's very important.
And personally, you know, you said even if it's one habit that you maintain and you carry on beyond Ramadan, are there any spiritual habits you have started building during this month that you plan to maintain and to sustain beyond this month?
Wow, Isabella, thanks for putting me on this spot. Well, I mean, obviously, that's a very personal thing individually, but it could vary. For some people, I mean, when we enter into the month, it's with that mindset of you already have the goals and things that you want to achieve, kind of like how we have New Year resolutions.
Yes.
For us, Ramadan is that period of reset where you're like, this is what I want to improve on. This is what I want to be able to do, and this is what I want to carry forward. So for me, it's been changing over the years as I've developed, you know, as an individual. At a point, it was being able to say my prayers on time. At a point, it was being able to give charity and sustain that. At a point, it was being able to sort of improve on my family relationships. Again, Ramadan is a time where family ties are strengthened. You're breaking your fast together. You're calling people and checking on them. So there isn't one thing, and I'm obviously not going to share my specific
or maybe your community
habit for this year, but it has
maybe something
always,
for your community.
Yeah, exactly. It has always been how do we really reclaim ourselves as women, as Muslims, and sort of outside of the noise, outside of the expectations, societal expectations, how do you find what really matters to you? I mean, it's a personal relationship, you and God. You're the one who knows where you're lacking and where you need to build on. So I think being honest about that, first of all, and being self-aware and knowing where you need to improve on, and then just deciding that even if it's one thing I'm going to pick, I'm going to try and maintain that going forward. So yes, there's no one size fits all. It really depends on where you are on your faith journey, and just being determined to progress on that.
And what would you say it's something you've heard that maybe it's a myth that surrounds the holy month of Ramadan that you'd like to clear? Because not so many people get to hear these conversations and they just think, oh, it's just about fasting, sun up to sundown. So are there any myths or misconceptions around the holy month that you'd like to clear up?
As basic as it sounds, I think there are people who believe that you don't eat at all. Like,
oh, wow.
You don't eat, you don't fast. It's like Yeah, just dry all the way from beginning of the month to obviously with what we've said, we know that's not true. Islam is a religion of ease. It is a religion of ease. Things are meant to be easy for you to do in terms of fulfilling your acts of worship. So we do eat sahur. We do not fast on a dry stomach through 30 days. You do eat sahur in the morning, and then you break your fast in the evening by eating iftar. Yeah, really, that's one misconception. There's another. I wouldn't say it's a misconception. It's more like taking advantage of, as I said, people are on their best behavior during Ramadan. So you don't want to shout, you don't want to like be aggressive, etc. Please don't antagonize people who are fasting. Be considerate and sort of like show empathy towards their situation, because yeah, most people, especially when they're fasting, ultimately aren't going to want to like be in confrontations or anything. So yeah, it's also just showing that tolerance for Muslims who are fasting in that month.
And any final words in 30 seconds or less?
Yeah, one thing I want to share is that as, you know, wonderful as the month is, as beautiful as the celebrations that we're facing today, there are Muslims who are in other parts of the world who are probably not able to celebrate Eid as much as we are. So I think that one thing that is really important and why this month is crucial is for us to be able to understand what they are going through. I mean, think about Muslims in war-torn areas, you know, who are fasting without even eating because they do not have the food. So it would be a call for Muslims themselves to be more geared towards developing the Ummah and praying for the Ummah where they cannot do anything about it. And then for non-Muslims to also join us in that month and sort of like showing increased tolerance on both sides, Muslims amongst Muslims, Muslims to non-Muslims, and non-Muslims to Muslims, for a better world.
Thank you so much. And once again, happy Eid al-Fitr, Khadija Bello, founder of the HSM tribe.
Thank you
tribe
for
for
having
women,
me, Isabella.
Muslim
Thank you very
women.
much.
Thank you for being our guest.
Yeah.